Hello, students. Welcome to week 3. In this week, we will discuss the age of reason, and we will notice a difference in the mood and in the works we are studying. So in the age of reason, we will discuss separating church and state, and then the Declaration of Independence. Then we will start discussing literary work elements. We have the life of Laude Equiano, which is a biography by Olaude Equiano himself. The Man Who Was Almost a Man by Richard Wright, and Democracy by Langston Hughes. And then I will teach you how to write a critical response essay. And that takes us to our case study assignment, which is a research paper. You will start working on it in week 3, and you have to submit it in week 6. So we'll start looking for 2 literary works to compare and to discuss. So for the age of reason, we're talking about the American Revolution, at the time where people are started to feel tired of the church authority in England and in the United States, and they got tired also for the authority of the Queen in England over the colonies. So ideas from the age of reason. When we say age of reason, we are discussing or referring to reasoning, logic. So now we are depending on logic, which is the same idea here. The universe is based on rational laws or laws of nature. So they started to make sense of everything, like why it rains, why we have wind, why we are starving, not because of God, not because God decided for you whether you are doomed, whether you are, or you will be a successful person. So they started to think and rationale everything. So try to find means, a justification, a reason behind it. Government with the consent of the people. They wanted a government that is chosen by the people, or at least people know them, agree on them, because people in the colonies didn't know the queen and the king anymore. They live in a different continent, far away from their governors. Separation of church and state, and this is very crucial for our days society, because the church was very dominant and interfered with the life of every individual. And if you remember last week, we discussed the witch hunt, how the Puritans lived the life of God. Everything should be lived through the Bible only. Every person should read the Bible, and they should not have representatives in the government. They should govern themselves. Now we have a different attitude and different path, trying to separate the church from the state. Individual liberty, more focus on individual liberty, more focus on individuals. And government should implement the will of the people. So again, it's about the individuals, what they want, what they need. So the government is not about themselves gaining money, gaining profits, getting taxes and gold from the colonies and from the people. And the last item, balance between individual liberty and governmental authority. So they want a compromise between both. They started rejecting the church of authority. Please view all the videos. I posted this PowerPoint, but if I click on the button right now to play it, it won't play while I'm recording. In that era, we have key figures. Those people affected the direction, the trajectory of the whole country, the whole nation, the colonies, the individuals. Because some of these people, if not, in fact, all of these people were behind the success of the independence war. So Benjamin Franklin and George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, these 3 became presidents, and they signed the Declaration of Independence. They wanted to separate from England. And John Adams and Abigail, she was a spy for him. And John Adams also, I don't know if you watched the movie, also Thomas Paine. These people helped the whole nation to move to a new era, which is the American Revolution era, and the signature on 1776 on the Declaration of Independence. So the Congress signed the Declaration of Independence in July 4th, 1776. By the representatives of the United States of America. So now we claim, we declare, we announce it as United States of America, not colonies anymore, not colonies for England anymore. So we are not ruled by England anymore. So they declared independence, which means they declared the war. So you cannot have your independence unless you fight for it. And one of the items I chose from the Declaration of Independence is this amendment. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. When they say all men, we generalize, it means men and women. That all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So these are three were the focal point of the demands: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. At the beginning, it was only life and liberty. Then Thomas Jefferson fought for the idea, the pursuit of happiness. So he said, there is no point of a person who is alive and free, but starving and miserable. So they added the pursuit of happiness. And signed by Thomas Jefferson, the Declaration of Independence, Second Continental Congress, and Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. Key dates: 1775 until 1781, War of American Independence. Then July 1776, Declaration of Independence signed. The effect of it, you have to understand that the American Revolution against England, in fact, started the spark for the French Revolution in 1789. So they got enthusiastic and they thought, if they can do it, we can do it. Also, I want you to watch The Pursuit of Happiness. And there is a movie also, The Pursuit of Happiness, that's really has an impact on me. So slavery, a complicated issue, although, okay, it's not showing. That's fine, let's go back. Although many people tried to work on slavery abolition, but many of them had that complicated idea that, okay, let me try again if I can work it. So this is about Thomas Jefferson.
That is usually covered by our phone. As far
Thomas Jefferson, in fact, had a plantation.
Have been telling stories implicating Jefferson.
Most likely you can't hear the video, but it states that he had many slaves, and people recently trying to blame him as if one of the hypocrites. However, we have to understand that during that time, although he had almost 600 slaves, he freed only 7 of them. People think right now it's easy to free slaves. In fact, even if he freed them, someone will come and claim them. Someone will come and confiscate them and make them slaves again. So he knew that, and it wasn't his choice to free them, because there should be a big reason. Unless a slave rescues someone's life, he or she cannot have his freedom or her freedom. So Jefferson knew that at the time and couldn't just give them their freedom and then someone else will claim them, take them slaves again and sell them to someone else. So it's better to deal with them, to keep them with him. This was his point of view. So there are many complicated issues at that time. And that was the era of the revolution, the era of no more colonies, and at the beginning of the United States as we know it. So American literature started before that era through the colonies and discussed that before. And now we will continue in addition to going back to the idea of slavery. So we'll discuss now slavery because that led after the Civil War, in fact, the revolution led to the Civil War later on because the Declaration of Independence stated clearly that every man is free, equally free. How about slaves who were enslaved and kidnapped from Africa? They should be free, right? So that led to the Civil War later. However, we will start working on some of the works stating and explaining, describing, and depicting a vivid image of slavery and how it started. So Alauda Equiano is one of the African people who was kidnapped from his country in Africa. He was kidnapped and sold many times in Africa to different families. And until then, he was just a product, but he didn't feel that much alienated because he was still in Africa. He could understand the people talking to him. All of them were Black, and they were talking his language and understanding his background. However, he was sold until he reached to Portugal. So most of the slaves hunters who kidnapped them, they just kidnapped them to sell them to the Portuguese sailors. And when he reached to the Portugal, that's the minute his life changed. He saw new people, white people, never saw them before. They were speaking a different language. He didn't understand them. And they took him in a ship where they traveled to the New World. So the interesting narratives of the life of Alauda Equiano, he was one of the people kidnapped, and he wrote this autobiography. It's a memoir, describes Alauda Equiano's journey in slavery, how they kidnapped him and his sister. So Equiano and his sister were kidnapped and forced to travel with their captors for a time until the two children are separated. Then he disclaimed, he's never seen his sister anymore, and he's forced into a slave ship that started in Portugal and traveled for months to the New World and spends the next several weeks on the ship under terrible conditions. Many slaves starved to death, and many committed suicide by drowning in the ocean. They just jumped to the ocean to drown, to end their lives. And many of them, in fact, refuse to eat because they know if they starve, they will die, and they are, or they were worth nothing if they are dead. But that didn't affect the owners. We will jump from that time to our recent day. We have Democracy by Langston Hughes. It's on page 1042. Langston Hughes is an African-American poet who was very well known. He traveled around the world. He went to Paris and worked there for a while. He traveled through Europe. He lived in different countries, learned different languages, and learned about the world. He was studying in the university in the United States. He studied for 1 year, then he left to France, to Paris, to work there. And he wrote one of these poems that represents democracy. So we were discussing the Declaration of the Independence, how it clears the idea that every man and woman definitely are free, are equal, and they have the right of liberty and pursuing happiness. So now Langston Hughes nowadays is trying to make sense of it. Do we really have that liberty? Do we have democracy? So democracy will not come today, this year, nor ever. I have as much right as the other fellow has to stand on my 2 feet and own the land. I tire so of hearing people say, let things take their course, tomorrow is another day. I don't need my freedom when I'm dead. I can't live on tomorrow's bread. Freedom is a strong seed planted in a great need. I live here too, just as you. So I hope you understand. I hope it makes sense to you. And this is another poem also by the same author. I Too Sing America. It's a beautiful poem. Please read it. And for your assignments, you will start your case study, the critical response essay. Please read the instructions. You will choose 2 texts from this course that belong to different historical periods on American literature. You will analyze their progression, their setbacks, and so forth. And these are the elements you might address. You can choose 3, 4, 5, whatever you want, at least 3 of these. You can discuss the writer, the plot, characters, setting and context. This is a must. You don't have a choice. You have to include it. It's when and where, the era, the background. Then conflict, climax, symbols, theme, purpose, and audience. So settings and context is not a choice. You have to add it. You have to include it. And then you can choose 2 or 3 at least. And you will write the critical response essay structure. In fact, you'll write a critical response essay, and I will teach you how to structure it. Attend the class if you can on Tuesday, and I will go over these points one by one, how to write your essay. So you'll have an introduction with the background and thesis. You will have the summaries. You will summarize both literary works, the main ideas in them briefly, without giving your opinion. Then you will give your opinion in the body, analyzing elements, any elements you chose in addition to the context, and connecting the 2 elements to the context and historical era, then connecting them to your own life, to the present day and your life and our life in general. Then you'll have a conclusion and then the references page. Make sure you cite all the sources you use. And you will cite your references. You can also incorporate the literary work through a quotation. So this is how you support your ideas. A quotation, word by word, a summary, main ideas only, or paraphrase using your own words with the same point of view. So the author is representing himself through your words. So in a quotation, this is an example. For a summary, this is an example how to cite it. You always put the author before the quotation or the summary with the year of publication in parentheses, and then either the quotation or the summary or the paraphrase. If it's a quotation, you have to put the page number at the end. And you will have a references page with all the citations. If you have any questions, please email me, and we will meet on Tuesday only this week to make up Thursday's class, Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. Again, 10:30, not 10 a.m., 10:30 a.m. Have a great day. Bye-bye.